Well, today we're going to be talking about, utilizing advisors or, not utilizing advisors and kind of the difference when thinking about starting a business. I think I'll kick this off. Obviously, you need to talk to trusted people about anything that you're thinking about doing when it comes to getting into a business. My advice, though, is to talk to people that are in that industry. So if you're thinking about getting into the technology industry, talk to a technology advisor. Thinking about getting into franchising, talk to a franchise advisor, not your neighbor, not your, friend that tells you that, they don't think franchising makes sense because they, heard on TV that, XYZ happened. And I would tell you that where I like to think about this is I'm on my maybe fourth business of starting, and I've never had a family member, not one time, it's a good idea. Not one time, anyone of all my business ever said, you should go for that. It's a good time. Never been the case. And I'll leave with, or I'll kind of end with, I was thinking about this. Sarah Blakely, she started Spanx. And she actually said that when she had the idea, she didn't tell anyone for a year. She built the idea because she knew that people, she told them they would start to bring her down. So she had to work on her own, get that momentum, get that confidence. What do you guys think about that?
You actually did that to me. I had a business idea a long time ago. When we first started our consulting business, I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I was like, we just need to make a site where we sell FDDs and has like every single FDD on it. And then after we sold the business, I did it and it worked.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't listen to Dan.
Don't listen to me. He applies to me
It
too.
applies.
I was like, why didn't I do that earlier? But it definitely was a massive undertaking at the time. But I think what we were talking about with Giuseppe was with the Shark Tank. And you were telling us about something, and that's how we went into how even the sharks are wrong.
Yeah, listen, you never know exactly what's going to work out. And I think just to add to kind of what you guys were saying, sometimes it's people don't mean anything negative by it. It's more of they're being, cautious, right? They don't want you to lose money or there's a big risk. Believe it or not, my first business, my accountant told me I couldn't make money with the franchise. So you know what happened? I made money with the franchise and I fired the accountant. So hopefully he's not listening. We're not going to name names, but so, they look at the numbers. They don't look at necessarily the big picture of the actual business itself. So yeah, I completely get it. But when you do ask for advice, you do have to be very cautious of who you're asking for.
And where are their motivations coming from?
Sure.
I know that in my 11 years of being in franchising, I've never heard a financial planner, no offense to financial planners, but a lot of times I've seen people, they get close to buying a business. They go to their financial planner to get their financial planner's opinion. And, again, I like to think most people operate with integrity. I'm sure they do. But keep in mind, the money that you have in your retirement account or in your investment accounts, if you're talking to your financial planner about taking them out, they make a percentage fee on the money that's in there.
Right.
The more that is in there, the more that they can manage and the more that they can make you, but also the more that they can make themselves. And so a lot of times they're not going to be motivated either to say, yeah, I think it's a great idea to take out half the revenue stream of my business out of the account so you can go do another business.
Meanwhile, they own their own business anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, offense to financial planners. I am offended.
It's and that's part of it, right? It's percentage of assets under management, and it's hard to control a startup versus you're buying mutual funds. There's data. There's a lot more history. So yeah, I've experienced that as well. So what about Shark Tank? Do we have some examples of some deals that?
But imagine if you were like, well, let me call Mark Cuban, and you had his ear, and you told him about an idea. They were wrong on the Ring doorbell, which is massive. They were wrong about so many other things, and then they invested a lot of money in things that didn't work, like that sweet balls. Like, what was that about? So I think even if you have people that could be experts, they could be wrong. You just need to trust your instinct, and the secret ingredient in a business is you.
I think back, if we had went around and tried to find reasons not to start, vote or make the acquisition and then franchise, I wouldn't have done it. There would be a million things that people would tell you. You just kind of have to talk to customers, obviously, to make, or potential customers and listen to them and see kind of their feedback. But anyone else, it doesn't matter. And, I'll give you another example. I've had so many times where people are close to buying a franchise, for example, and then they go, oh, well, like my neighbor has, advised me I shouldn't do it. I was like, what does your neighbor do? Oh, they're an accountant, or they're, whatever, a lawyer, or they're, they work in tech. It's like, why does your neighbor have any precedence on this decision? Well, they don't know anything about it. But people, a lot of times we just trust people that we know, even if they have no knowledge of space.
You just triggered a core memory. I was talking to this guy, and I'll never forget. He worked his whole life, and his wife stayed at home, and he was like, "It's finally my chance. I'm going to start a business. I really want to do something on my own." And his wife had this control over him where she was like, "No." And I felt really bad because, like, number one, I was like, "Oh, what does she do for a living?" "Oh, she's never worked." I'm like, "Okay." But maybe she's like a business background professionally. Is she like in finance, or is she examining the numbers? No, no, none of that. I was like, wow, like I'm thinking in my mind, like, she doesn't believe in you. Like, that is so sad that you have someone that you've supported your whole life and like they still don't have faith in your abilities.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. I was actually just having that conversation with someone. What I've learned, and this is not really related to like talking to an advisor, not about buying a business, but just in general, when it comes to teammates and partnerships, something I've learned is that more times than not, in my experience in business, when I find that someone is acting differently, a lot of times you don't realize how much of that is driven by the spouse or the
Right.
family members, whether it's a, company owned by, a father son, and all of a sudden it's not the father son relationship that can change. It's the son's spouse or the daughter's spouse
Right.
that, starts to see the opportunity or starts to understand things a little bit differently and starts to get into their ear. And so I've learned something. It's so interesting. Like same with business partnerships. You better make sure that you have a pretty good relationship with the spouse of your business
Yeah.
partner, because if you don't have the trust there too, that can go really quickly the other way. Because of course they're going to side with their spouse as they
Right.
should, but if they don't have all the information or lifestyle changes, it's very important to be careful of that.
So would you say, I think it's important for everyone to be at the table. So if you are buying a franchise, whatever the business is, that partnership, everyone should be on the table. Everyone should know exactly what's involved, because as a consultant, if we're talking about a franchise, maybe they're not, relaying that message back to the spouse. So I always, mention, hey, we'd like everyone to be on these calls together. So if there's a concern or a question, we all kind of are on the same page. Not easy, and I don't know if you would agree, but to get everyone on the phone, but it just makes it so much simpler. And that way everyone knows the plan. And the expectation is we're going to grow this. This is where we want to be. Maybe the plan is to sell it in 10 years. So I think that's crucial. I think everyone involved in the decision, and even the families, why is mom or dad buying this franchise? It's so we can spend more time with Mia and everybody else. So, that's the reason for doing it.
I think I put the fear of God into people because when we have that conversation, I'm like, take it from someone that's been divorced. You either do something to your spouse or you do it with them.
Right.
So I would definitely recommend having your spouse on the calls, and they're on the calls.
100%. And they don't have to be on every call. Like my wife was on the first call, and she was like, great. She's like, you're going to run your business. I'll support you every way I can, but I'm going to keep my job. And she's been at the same employer for 25 years, and she's happy there. But she said, I understand the risk. She was on the first call. And then after that, she said, I don't have to be on the calls. Just let me know kind of what's going on. And that was our agreement, and it worked out fine.
When we talk about being married, and you think about it, like making a decision of anything, do you really make that many big decisions with your spouse? Of course not. So like, why
Yeah.
would it be the difference with a franchise? I actually think when people are looking at a franchise and they know their spouse usually is involved in decisions and they don't include them, it's kind of a way to kind of subconsciously give themselves a way out,
Right.
right? It's like, oh well, my spouse isn't on board. Well, you didn't bring them into the whole process.
Right.
Of course, they're
Right.
not on board. I wouldn't be either. Which is interesting. I think it's challenging though, right? Because I think there's a lot of people that they think, let me get the information first and then
Right.
bring my spouse. The other thing I've noticed is I think in the case of someone when they're the breadwinner their entire life, whoever in the relationship is the breadwinner their entire life, I think that's a little bit of a different situation where it's like, look, like you trusted me to provide for all this time. You're gonna have to, like you said, you have to bet on me here
Right.
too. And this is the move I have to make.
But maybe they just don't want to do it because honestly, like they might not be that into it if they're not really sharing it with their spouse. Do you know what I mean? Maybe they're like not all in yet. Like, I'm definitely doing this. They're more testing the waters before they bring them into the conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to understand is like if you want to, get in shape or lose weight, you have to go through pain to get there, right? If you want to make a business, successful, you have to go through sacrifice. And so you're going to have to, like you said, get your spouse involved because they have to be on board with the the sacrifice that
They're going to
they're
be
gonna have to make.
sacrificing too. It may, it
Yeah.
may, it may be no income the first year. It may be no vacations that first year, or
Yeah.
there's going to be a shift in lifestyle. So absolutely, they have to know they have to set. This is the expectation, but the goal is to, you know, go on more vacations, retire early, spend more time with the family. So I think if you set the expectation, they're on board then. But ultimately, everyone has to be on board, or it's going to be a rocky road.
I got a question. What's this trend or thing that I feel like I've been seeing, which is people that are looking at buying a franchise business with an expectation of like they have to make this, crazy profit their first year, which by the way, to me, crazy profit is anything that's like, a good amount of money. Like you're trying to replace
Right.
your salary or something in the first year. I've never really seen businesses usually do that. So, but what are you guys seeing where people come with those expectations? Has something changed in the kind of economy or the generation? Like, what is that kind of driving?
I think people expect the immediate return, right? They want to go viral in the first post on social media. So I think that's where it's coming from. I always tell people that first year it's a learning curve. You've never owned a business, you've never hired people, so this is all new. You're learning something new. But to be matching the income you were making immediately, you're building something. So to have that expectation, I always take a step back and say, realistically, any profit. So even if there is that kind of profit, you want to reinvest in the right team, in the right systems, because this is not a business that you hope to grow 10% a year. This is something that's going to be growing exponentially. That's something I've experienced in my business, and I always, my first year, reinvested everything back. I didn't take a dime out, but I also set reserves aside for that. So I think it's this instant gratification. I have to make money right away, and it's okay if you don't match your salary the first year. You should really be investing in those systems, or else you're starving the business. You're pulling too much out. You're not hiring the right people, or not paying them what they're owed, and you're not investing in the technology as well.
Yeah, but people say that, but they're still taking a salary, and they're saying the business isn't profitable, and
And they're pulling their salary, and
they're
they're
pulling their salary. So I mean, I think it just depends. Some people can hit the ground running, and some people don't. There's hurdles that you can't predict. No one has a crystal ball.
Right.
Like COVID happened, people that own certain businesses were affected, and other people. Like you were selling masks, you killed it, or
Right.
gloves, or whatever, right?
Right.
So it just depends. I think you can make money year one. We've done it before, and it's doable, but
It's more
I
of what
don't
you
know.
do with that money. So even if you
Yeah,
make the money, you don't have to pull it out. You
right.
can, reinvest. I think you should be reinvesting as much as you can to build that base, so that, the money's not made the first few years. The money's made later, and in many cases, money's made on the exit.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, yeah, right. People forget about the enterprise value that
Right.
they built in a
Right.
business. I was talking to a business owner that, had started building a business. Their first year did well, but didn't make money. They lost money.
Right.
But they were building the bones of the business.
Mhm.
And in their regular job, they made a substantial amount of money. And what you have to remember is like, I can't give tax advice, but when you lose money in a business, but you have another income, well, that loss is a net operating NOI, net operating loss.
Right.
And yeah, net operating loss. And it carries over into your taxes. And so if you're making a bunch of money in one place, well, now you're losing money, if you will, as far as your other business, but you're building a business, you're building an asset. You're mitigating tax exposure. And then the next year, when you do build the business further, and let's say you do start to make a profit, which by the way, most business owners, they want to try to have
Sure.
a big profit. But when they do start to have a profit, you're going to be able to get a multiple on that profit, whatever multiple down the road.
You've learned the key lessons for building a franchise that lasts for generations. Are you ready to start your own legacy journey with the right guidance? Click here to watch the full episode and then book your free call.